The interview ended without an argument, without a handshake, and without a single complaint. The single dad quietly gathered his worn folder, thanked the receptionist with a tired smile, and walked toward the glass doors believing another opportunity had slipped away forever. Inside the conference room, the CEO stared at the resume he had almost ignored. Then one forgotten detail changed everything. His face turned pale. He rushed out of his office, ran through the lobby, and chased the man into the street before it was too late. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, second chances, and good people deserve to be seen, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to SoulTales for more emotional stories that remind us humanity still matters. Every city has thousands of people carrying invisible battles, but very few carry them as quietly as Ethan Brooks. At 36 years old, he had learned that strength was often measured by silence rather than words. 3 years earlier, he had buried his wife after a sudden illness that drained every dollar they had saved. Since then, his entire world revolved around his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Every morning began before sunrise. He prepared breakfast, braided her hair as best as he could despite never learning properly, packed her lunch, and walked her to school before searching for work. He had once been a respected operations manager at a manufacturing company, leading teams with honesty and calm confidence. But after months away caring for his wife during her illness, his position disappeared during company restructuring. Since then, temporary jobs became his survival. Warehouse shifts, delivery routes, construction cleanup, grocery stocking, he accepted everything without complaint. Bills continued arriving faster than paychecks, and hope slowly became something he borrowed from his daughter's smile. The interview at Sterling Innovations represented more than employment. It represented stability. The company had an excellent reputation, generous benefits, and flexible hours that would allow Ethan to continue caring for Lily without leaving her alone after school. He spent an entire week preparing. He polished the only pair of dress shoes he owned until the cracked leather almost looked new. He ironed his old navy suit repeatedly, hoping the faded elbows would go unnoticed. Most importantly, he reviewed every detail of his career, determined to prove that experience mattered more than appearances. When Ethan entered the impressive headquarters, surrounded by polished marble floors and expensive artwork, he immediately felt out of place. Other candidates wore designer suits and carried expensive briefcases. Some spoke confidently about prestigious universities and corporate achievements. Ethan simply sat quietly, holding the same weathered folder that had accompanied him through dozens of unsuccessful interviews. He reminded himself that character could not be purchased and experience could not be borrowed. The interview itself started politely but quickly became discouraging. The hiring panel focused heavily on recent employment gaps rather than his years of leadership. They questioned why someone with his experience had accepted manual labor jobs instead of management positions. Ethan answered honestly. Caring for his dying wife had mattered more than promotions. Feeding his daughter mattered more than job titles. Temporary work kept food on the table while he searched for something permanent. Some interviewers nodded respectfully, but others seemed unconvinced. They saw a resume interrupted by hardship instead of resilience shaped through sacrifice. The CEO, Daniel Carter, happened to observe the interview from another room as part of a leadership initiative to personally review senior hires. During the discussion, he barely paid attention. Another candidate appeared stronger on paper, with recent executive experience and impressive corporate references. Ethan thanked everyone for their time, stood up, and quietly left the room. There was no bitterness in his expression, only familiar disappointment. It was the face of someone who had become accustomed to closed doors. Outside, light rain began falling across the city streets. Ethan looked toward the gray sky before starting the long walk to the bus stop. He calculated how much money remained in his wallet, and whether he could still buy Lily's favorite soup ingredients on the way home. She had a slight fever the previous evening, and he promised he would make her something warm regardless of how the interview ended. Back inside the conference room, one member of the hiring committee picked up Ethan's resume to file it away. A folded recommendation letter slipped onto the table. Daniel noticed the signature immediately. It belonged to his late father, William Carter, the company's founder. Curious, he opened the letter. Years earlier, William had personally written that Ethan was one of the rare people who protects others before protecting himself, after Ethan prevented a dangerous accident at another factory. The letter described how Ethan stayed behind during an equipment failure, safely evacuating dozens of workers before helping emergency responders. William ended the letter with words Daniel would never forget because they echoed lessons from his childhood. Companies can teach skills, but integrity like this cannot be trained. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. His father had died shortly after writing that recommendation, and many of his personal files had remained untouched for years. Somehow this letter had never reached Sterling Innovations during earlier hiring rounds. Daniel suddenly realized the panel had nearly rejected exactly the kind of leader his father admired most. Without hesitation, he sprinted through the hallways, surprising employees who had never seen their composed CEO running. Receptionists looked up in confusion as he rushed past them and out the revolving doors. Across the street, Ethan heard someone calling his name. He turned slowly, expecting perhaps he had forgotten paperwork inside. Instead, he saw the CEO running toward him through the rain, completely ignoring the expensive suit becoming soaked. People stopped walking to watch the unusual scene unfold. Daniel apologized sincerely for almost allowing appearances and recent circumstances to outweigh years of proven character. He explained what he had discovered inside and admitted the company had nearly made a terrible mistake. That afternoon changed both men's lives, though not because of wealth or prestige. Daniel invited Ethan back into the building, not for another interview but for an honest conversation. Instead of discussing quarterly profits or performance metrics, they discussed leadership, responsibility, and what true success meant. Ethan spoke about raising Lily, learning patience through grief, and discovering that the strongest leaders often served quietly without recognition. Daniel listened carefully, realizing he had been searching for polished resumes while overlooking genuine humanity. Within days, Ethan accepted a leadership position focused on improving operations and mentoring younger managers. From his very first week, employees noticed something different. He greeted security guards by name, thanked custodians personally, and never asked others to complete tasks he refused to do himself. When deadlines became stressful, he remained calm instead of raising his voice. Teams that had struggled for years slowly became more united because people trusted someone who understood hardship instead of simply managing spreadsheets. At home, life transformed in beautiful but simple ways. Bills were finally paid on time. Lily received the art supplies she had quietly wished for without asking her father to spend money they did not have. Their small apartment filled with laughter instead of silent worry. Every evening Ethan still cooked dinner, helped with homework, and tucked Lily into bed, reminding her that success meant very little if it cost the people you loved most. Months later, Sterling Innovations launched a scholarship program for children who had lost a parent, inspired by Ethan's journey. Daniel insisted the initiative remain anonymous because he believed kindness should never exist merely for publicity. Dozens of families received hope they never expected, and employees volunteered countless hours mentoring young students across the community. One afternoon, Lily visited the company during Family Day. She proudly watched coworkers greet her father with genuine respect rather than fear. One elderly maintenance worker quietly told her that her dad had changed the entire building. People smiled more. Managers listened better. New employees felt welcomed instead of intimidated. Lily looked at her father with quiet pride, finally understanding why her mother always called him the strongest man she had ever known. Years later, Daniel often reflected on that rainy afternoon outside the headquarters. He realized companies rarely failed because they lacked intelligence. They failed because they overlooked people whose greatest achievements could never fit inside bullet points on a resume. Ethan's silence after rejection had revealed more dignity than many speeches ever could. Sometimes the people walking away without complaining are carrying stories powerful enough to transform everyone around them. Before we reach the end of this story, we'd love to hear from you. Please comment below, what do you think is more important, an impressive resume or a kind and honest heart? Your thoughts may inspire someone else reading the comments today. If this story touched your heart, reminded you to never judge someone by appearances, or encouraged you to keep believing in second chances, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with family and friends, and subscribe to SoulTales. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need hope the most. Ethan walked into that building believing he was searching for a job. He walked out with something far greater, a reminder that integrity always leaves a trail, even when no one seems to notice. And somewhere in the quiet moments between heartbreak and hope, the world finally caught up with the man who had spent his entire life choosing kindness over recognition. Sometimes the greatest opportunities do not begin with being chosen. They begin with refusing to lose your character, even when everyone else has already overlooked you.